Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and honored guests. My name is Sam Cernette, and I'm the Senior Patrol Leader of Troop 237 here in Orinda. I'm honored to serve as your Master of Ceremonies tonight, and now I would like you to join us in the presentation of the colors.
Color guard, forward march. Color guard, hold. Color guard, prepare to post the colors. Troop salute. Color guard, post the colors. Now may the audience please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, can the scouts join me in the oath? On my honor, I will do my best
to do my duty to God and my country, to the best of my law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, and to be awake and morally spirit.
2. Color guard, perform. Color guard, retreat. Color guard, halt. Color guard, dismiss. Audience, you may take your seats.
With the veterans of POW Post 8063, please rise. And put, present, arm. Order, arm. At ease. Thank you.
Thank you, Color Guard. Tonight we honor 15 veterans: Leonard Schneider, Warren Jensen, Bill Armstrong, Jake Larson, Earl Mortensen, Daniel Franklin, Richard Hershey, Lynne Freeman, Bob Hitchcock, Chuck Sapper, Herbert Smith, Benny Jordan, Hilbert Seward, and Bill Cooper. Sadly, Bob Therat cannot be here tonight. Bill Cooper is also a 237 Scoutmaster Emeritus. In addition to those who will speak, we have some special guests who are here to honor these veterans. John Fignolio, the Mount Diablo Silverado Council Executive, Michelle Poloka, an Occoquan District Chair, John Squeary, an Occoquan District Director, Bill Liu, a VFW Post Commander and BSA Unit Commander, Wick Smith, the Occoquan District Commissioner and former 237 Scoutmaster. I would now like to introduce Tom Norris, our 237 chaplain, who will lead the invocation.
Hello, good evening. I'm Tom Norris, the new Troop 237 chaplain. I'm indebted to Patty Young, the outgoing chaplain, who has done a wonderful job of bringing me up to speed very quickly. Let us give thanks and seek blessings with the invocation. Almighty and compassionate God, we ask for your blessing on those gathered here, veterans, scouts, parents, councils, and guests. We especially seek blessings on the veterans present, their buddies who could not be present, their buddies who are not blessed with great longevity, and their buddies who perished in the war, now cared for by the French people. We are grateful for the service of all veterans of Normandy, for the service given so bravely 3 generations before. We give thanks for the long-enduring friendship of France and the United States, and for France honoring and recognizing these veterans present as representatives of so many more veterans. Their collective brave service and that of the soldiers and citizens of France, with your guidance, has given us continued freedom to worship and speak freely and enjoy a remarkable prosperity. These assembled scouts and those many scouts like them represent our future. We ask for your guidance and counsel as they witness and seek understanding of this honoring of the brave and the events. We ask not only for tonight, but also for your understanding and counsel in their leadership role during the next generation. May they understand the history shown tonight and be able to avoid its worst perils. We ask these blessings in God's name. Amen. Scouts, I have a question to challenge you with. Has, is, and will there be truth to the saying, freedom is not free? And a question. Do you know someone who has put their life at risk for the freedom of others, including us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. I would now like to introduce Troop 237's Committee Chair, Dan Lyons.
I want to take a moment to thank all our volunteers, our parents, scouts, and especially our special guests, the veterans who are making this all possible here this evening, so thank you very much. Troop 237 has been in Orinda for over 60 years. We're a boy-led program that not only emphasizes the outdoor adventure aspects of Boy Scouting, but more importantly, the patrol, teamwork, community service, and leadership. And we work very hard to provide as many opportunities as possible for our scouts to practice the skills and develop the skills that will serve them for the rest of their lives. That's why we are very proud and excited to have this opportunity tonight to honor these men here who have served their country bravely and still serve as a wonderful example for our young men. So welcome and enjoy the ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Next, I would like to introduce retired Marine Captain and Naval Academy graduate and BSA Unit Commissioner Ron Wecht. Mr. Wecht is also the father of Troop 237 Eagle Scout Kevin Wecht. Mr. Wecht will present the Golden Dragon Award to Scoutmaster Emeritus Bill Cooper.
Good evening, everyone. Let me give you a little background on this. Several months ago, Bill came to me, knowing that I was a Naval Academy graduate, and said, you know, as you all know, Bill is very proud of his World War II service, justifiably so. And he said, there's an award that I didn't get back in World War II that I should have gotten. And I wonder if you could help me get it. He says, I've tried to get it and I just can't seem to get a response. I said, sure, where do we start? He says, well, here's the letter I wrote. And his letter was to something called the U.S. Naval Institute, which just happens to be located at the U.S. Naval Academy. And so I took his letter and I called up the Naval Institute and asked him, I'm trying to find somebody who can get me an award of the Golden Dragon. And they said, well, we don't do that anymore. We used to do that. I said, oh. And I explained to them, and I had a young veteran who was going to be 90 next year, now this year. And he was entitled to the Golden Dragon Award, but he didn't get it. Oh, okay, well, maybe we can do something about that then. And so they agreed to actually make up a certificate print it all out with his data, and I just had to get his data. Now, a little background here, the Golden Dragon Award. Not too long after Bill gave up his scout uniform, he got a letter from his Uncle Sam that said, we'd like you to put on another uniform. This one is the United States Army. And I think that was in 1944 or 43? 43. And you all know what was going on then. So Bill, of course, donned that uniform. And lo and behold, he found himself aboard a troop ship, the USS General Hugh Scott. I don't know how many men were on board that ship.
Too many.
Crew's about 400 or 500, but they, according to Wikipedia, carry about 3,500 troops. I'm sure it wasn't the Queen Elizabeth. They were probably stacked like cordwood in there, and they went at a stately 20 miles an hour clear across the Pacific Ocean. And the Navy has a ceremony when you cross the equator the first time. Until you cross the equator, you're known as a polywog. And then when you cross the equator the very first time, they have a big ceremony and throw water on you and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And you become a shellback. And so while Bill was on the ship, they crossed the equator. So they had the big ceremony and he became a shellback. But they also crossed the international date line. That's a line that, it's not, I don't know if perpendicular is the right word, but it intersects the equator. And at the international date line, which is out in the western Pacific Ocean, it's tomorrow as soon as you cross it. And when you cross both the international date line and the equator at approximately the same time, you're entitled not only to the shellback, you're entitled to be inducted into the Order of the Golden Dragon. And so something Bill has missed all these years, he's going to get tonight. I want to read the citation that goes along with this so you'll understand the spirit in which this is given. Domain of the Golden Dragon, to all sailors wherever ye may be, and to all sea serpents, crabs, mutineers, know ye, on 27 August 1944, within the boundaries of my draconic realm, there appeared the USS General Hugh L. Scott, AP 166. That's the number on the ship. Be it known that said renowned vessel crossed the 180th meridian in latitude 000, and all her officers and crew have been duly inspected and passed upon by my venerable body of judges. It is therefore my privilege to proclaim, with the authority of my sphere of influence, that Private William E. Cooper, United States Army, having now been found worthy, has been gathered into my fold and duly initiated into the silent, occult mysteries of the Far East. And be it further understood that as a member of my august retinue is therefore entitled to all the rights and privileges accorded such personages. Disobey this order under extreme penalty of my royal displeasure. John Treves, commanding. And that, with this, Bill is inducted into the domain of the Golden Dragon. Bill, this Bill, this is the award, and he now has the Shellback Award on his wall at home in a frame. I got as close to that frame as I possibly could.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And just in case you have something you can carry around with you, there's also a wallet card that goes along with it. Congratulations, Bill.
Thank you. Tongue-tied here all of a sudden. I was going to say Moubien, or not Moubien, but merci beaucoup, I guess. Merci beaucoup. Yeah. What a great night for these veterans. What a great night for scouting. Vive la France.
Congratulations, Mr. Cooper. Thank you, Mr. Wecht. It is now my honor to introduce our council president, Mr. Lou Paulson. Mr. Paulson is an Eagle Scout and past president of the California Firefighters Association. Mr. Paulson.
Thank you. What a great night for scouting, and what a great night for our country. I've been asked to just obviously welcome all of you on behalf of the Mount Diablo Silverado Council and talk about a couple minutes about the relationship between the military and scouting. And I think one thing that came to mind this evening for me right off the bat is that when you're in a room with a bunch of veterans and a bunch of scouts, nobody's shy about saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And that was very true tonight. The scouting movement has a long history of being involved with the military. It really started with the War to End All Wars, World War I, where the scouting movement got involved to help this country with rationing and collecting materials during the war effort. And that continued on to World War II with the Greatest Generation and lives on today, helping veterans that are still out protecting our country daily. The fundamental goals of scouting, as many of you all know, is to build character, citizenship, and service and duty, all things that the military upholds daily. And so it's not a surprise that 20% of the folks that go in the West Point are Eagle Scouts every year because of what scouting does. So we are happy to be here tonight on behalf of the Boy Scouts of America in a bigger picture, and obviously the troop here to honor these veterans. I can just say personally that my wife and I were talking. We were in France a few years ago to Paris for our wedding anniversary, and we had to go to Normandy. I wanted to go see the place of the longest day and walk on the shores and climb the cliffs and take a look. And it is one of those places that you look in awe of and say, how could anybody have done what they did? So it's great that we're here to honor these folks that in one day, a single day, changed the course of the world. Scouting's happy to do that, and on behalf of my family and everybody here in the Boy Scouts of America, we want to thank you all for what you've done for this country and really this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. We are now very honored to have the French Consul General Pauline Carmona present the awards and certificates for the Normandy Invasion 70th Anniversary Medals. She has served in Yugoslavia, Hong Kong, Tokyo, as well as duties involving global commerce and development strategies. In San Francisco, she recently spoke about the defense of our shared values of freedom of speech, pluralism, and democracy at the Rally of Support following the terrorist attack that killed 12 in Paris at the French magazine Charlie Hebdo. The French Consul General, Pauline Carmona.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it's a great honor for me today as Consul General of France to take part in Orinda to their ceremony in memory of the Battle of Normandy. The state of the friendship and of the alliance between France and the United States is very strong. Friendship, first and foremost, means being true to one's friends. Since the birth of the United States as a free nation, the loyalty between the French and American people has never failed. And far from being weakened by the vicissitudes of history, it has never ceased growing stronger. America and France have always stood side by side, supported one another, helped one another, fought for each other's freedom. They remain true to the same idea, the same principles, the same values that have always united them: freedom and democracy. More than 200 years ago, Lafayette came to America because France decided to stand up to support the American Revolution and to defend the freedom of a great nation. 70 years ago, young American soldiers came by the thousands to save us from hell. Today, I'm particularly honored to celebrate all these American heroes whose faith, courage, and sacrifice contributed to the preservation of our common values: democracy, freedom, tolerance, and justice. I'm also honored to pay tribute to all those who did not make it back to their home, to their families, those who gave their life at sea, on land, in the air, to save France from slavery and Europe from hell. I'm here today to tell you that these people of France have not forgotten. Their children and grandchildren, and I'm one of them, have not forgotten. If you travel today to France, and especially to Normandy, you will see in many cities and villages a Boulevard des Américains, a General Patton Avenue, a street of the 7th Army, a General Eisenhower Drive, a square of the United States. Thanks to America and thanks to you, people of my generation were allowed to grow up in a free country. We remember today the sacrifice of American heroes. Let us be worthy of their example. Let us be equal to their sacrifice. Let us be true to their memories. Long live the French-American friendship. Thank you very much. Lynne Freeman, je vous remets la médaille de la région de Normandie. Congratulations. Je vous remets la médaille de la région de Normandie. Je vous remets la médaille de la région de Normandie. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mrs. Carmona. It is now my pleasure to introduce Assistant Scoutmaster and City of Orinda Vice Mayor Victoria Smith and Mother of Eagle Scouts Will and Daniel Smith, who will present the certificates for the City of Orinda.
Thank you very much, and it is my very great pleasure and honor to be here tonight on behalf of the City of Orinda and the City Council of Orinda. I want to thank Troop 237 and its chartering organization, the Orinda Community Church, for bringing us here tonight for this very important celebration and commemoration. And it is very fitting that it is the Boy Scouts of America who has been asked to assist the French government in giving these awards, because the Boy Scouts and the veterans have many things in common, and many veterans are members of the Boy Scouts of America, and that is duty to country, duty to God, and leadership. And so we are very grateful for having this opportunity tonight to thank our veterans. I especially want to thank Scoutmaster Emeritus Bill Cooper, who had the idea and who was the guiding force between bringing us here tonight. He's been working on this for a number of months, did most of the lead work, and we appreciate that, as well as we appreciate his service during World War II in the Pacific Theater. I want to thank as well all of the La Morinda veterans, all of the gentlemen who are here tonight, as well as others who, as I say, are associated, many of whom are associated with the Boy Scouts. We saw tonight Bill Liu, who is here with the VFW, and he is an Auckland District member, district representative. We have Ron Wecht, who is a former Assistant Scoutmaster in this troop, and who is also an Auckland Unit Commissioner. Terry Murphy, I know, is here with the VFW, and many, many gentlemen from the VFW here tonight, as well as I just learned earlier, a nurse who served in Vietnam. To all of you, thank you. Thank you very much for your service. And I want to I want to thank Council General Pauline Carmona for personally coming to our small city of Orinda tonight. It is symbolic of our great friendship between our two nations and the love and affection that both the people of France and the people of America bear to our veterans who gave so much. So thank you very much for being here. It is really great to see so many of the Boy Scouts from 237 here tonight. And I hope that you will have the same experience that I did. Last August, my family and I were fortunate enough to go to visit Normandy and to visit the D-Day beaches. My husband, Wick, and our son, Daniel, who's an Eagle Scout in this troop, and his girlfriend, Sarah. We really wanted to see where this all happened. And I have to tell you, I hope you have that opportunity and that you can go with your families, because we have all learned about it in history classes and history books. But there is no real understanding, internally, and really getting the feeling for it as standing on the beaches, the Utah and Omaha beaches, to stand at Pointe du Hoc and St. Mary Glace, and to see, and I knew this wasn't going to happen. Those of you who know me from Troop 237 know that I'm used to doing proclamations, but this is really deep, strikes deep to the heart of all of us. So I would say that when you actually are in Normandy and you see what these gentlemen experienced, when you see what was almost a suicide mission for them to partake in, when you stand on the beach, when you stand up in the German bunkers, when you see how the artillery rained down upon them, and how they had to struggle out of the sea with their weapons and the weight of their equipment, and those who came in on Air Force and were being shot at from the ground, then you understand that there was a very, very dangerous mission with a small probability of success. And I have to say that one of the most amazing things for me was to go to the Kahn Museum of Peace, where they have an exhibit from General Eisenhower. I didn't know until I went there that in advance of D-Day, he actually prepared a press release, a speech that he was going to give afterwards, just to be prepared. And that speech said, I'm sorry, they gave their all, but they couldn't do it. The odds were against them because the chances of success were so slight. And yet they did. They are heroes here tonight, and heroes of those who did not make it back. And when you stand in the American cemetery and you see acres and acres of crosses and stars of David and the other religious emblems, then you really understand the sacrifice that was made by these veterans. So again, we thank you for your sacrifice, and I hope that the Scouts, you will have that opportunity to learn the meaning, really, of what these gentlemen did. Enormous sacrifice and enormous courage. And it is for my family personally meaningful because my father-in-law, Wick Sr., was in one of the operational groups, Operation Emily. They parachuted into the south of France a couple of days after D-Day in order to stop the German panzer divisions from reaching the D-Day beaches, and they were successful. So it is very meaningful to us as well. There is a memorial in the south of France, farther away from Normandy, that really delivers the message the best, and that is forgive, but never forget. And I want the veterans here today to know that your sacrifices will always be remembered by your country. By those of us here today, they will never be forgotten. We will not forget your courage, because you turned the tide of war in Europe, and a grateful nation thanks you. So, I am... very proud to present tonight proclamations from the city of Orinda to each of the veterans. I will only read it once. And they read as follows. Proclamation recognizing Leonard Snyder, Warren Jensen, Bill Armstrong, Jake Larson, Earl Mortensen, Daniel Franklin, Richard Hersey, Lynne Freeman, Bob Hitchcock, Chuck Sapper, Herbert Smith, Bob Therrett, Benny Jordan, and Hilbert Seiwert, World War II veterans of Normandy. Whereas the Normandy regional government of France has issued medals honoring the American service members who participated in the Normandy invasion and reconstruction on the 70th anniversary of D-Day, and whereas this was the largest invasion force in history, and whereas since the freedom of Europe was in the balance, let us now recognize these surviving heroes that we have in our midst. Whereas it is right and appropriate that the Boy Scouts of America, on behalf of the Normandy government, award these medals and so pass on to our youth the importance of sacrifice and love of freedom that these veterans demonstrated on the Normandy beaches. Therefore, be it resolved that we recognize that the French people have recognized our veterans as embodied by the phrase at the memorial, leur sacrifice, notre liberté, their sacrifice, our freedom. Be it further resolved that the Orinda City Council thank each of these veterans for his service to the country. And that is signed Victoria Smith, Vice Mayor, City of Orinda, and lovingly made by our City Clerk, Michelle Olson, and I will present them now individually.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Smith. I would now like to ask Leonard Schneider and Warren Jensen, as spokespersons for the vets, to tell a little bit about the experience of Normandy.
if I could hitchhike on Madam Consul General, in World War I, when General Black Jack Pershing landed at France, he stepped off the boat and said, "Lafayette, we are here." Something I can't say in French except ici, which indicated the friendship between the French and the Americans. I'd like to say to the Boy Scouts that if we hadn't prevailed, we'd all be speaking German now. You'd be in the Hitler Youth Organization, which is a ruthless place, and we'd all be living in a fascist society. Probably the Secret Service would be in the background here. I got thinking, Boy Scouts and the military have much in common. We both wear uniforms, we both salute, we both pledge allegiances, we give oaths, and in that respect, we're very similar. I would just mention that I volunteered, and I wanted to go in at 18, but my parents wouldn't let me. I went in at 19, and I joined the field artillery. And after a year and a half training, we went to England, moved down towards the port of Southampton, because we knew the invasion was coming. We were just living on the streets of the residential area of Southampton. On June 6th, we were woken by the sound of about 10,000 aircraft flying overhead, and we knew the invasion was on. These were carrying troops, paratroopers, glider men, the bombers, and the fighters. We loaded aboard a landing craft tank, LCT, which is about 40 yards, half a football field in length, about 20 yards wide, flat bottomed, and into the choppy sea. Now, the strange thing, which is interesting, I think, Adolf Hitler thought we would take the shortest route, which was from England to Calais, about 26 miles. And Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, a very great strategist, he thought we were not going to do that we would fool and deceive, and we would land at Normandy, in which he fortified tremendously. So when we landed, Hitler thought it was a feint, and he kept his 15th Army there at Calais. If he had let loose those with all the tanks, we would have been thrown back into the sea. Give you an idea of the carnage, the 111th Field Artillery Battalion, which had 18 howitzers on different landing craft. 18. 17 didn't make it to the beach. One got ashore, fired one round, and was taken out. Our boys did something. The heroics are just unbelievable. In the Army, we have two sayings, acronyms, Snafu and Fubar. You guys remember that? Snafu, situation, normal, all fouled up. And Fubar is fouled up beyond all recognition. And that's what happened during the Normandy landings. The waves threw boats off of their landing areas. Many were sunk, of course. It was just chaos. And our guys somehow pulled themselves together and drove up. Rommel, incidentally, had 6.5 million mines on that beach, besides all the barbed wire and machine gun emplacements and so forth. A German machine gunner recently wrote a book. He estimates, while burning out one barrel of his machine gun, that he had killed 2,000 Americans. He would just train the machine gun on the ramp of a landing craft as it came down and would just spray the guys. And many of them never reached the beach at all. We landed in about 4 feet of water, went up the bluff. Those of you who've been over there know there's a real high bluff. And we got up there and we were able to get into position and begin firing on the city of if my French is Saint Lo or Saint Lo. And from there, things were pretty good. We were there for a short time and then began moving inland. While we were in England, excuse me, many of the boys began wondering, about mortality, about death, and some were had been raised, many of us had been raised, the 10 Commandments. The sixth says, thou shalt not kill. Well, as we get into it, we find the Aramaic at the time was truly, thou shalt not murder. So kill is different from murder. Murder is killing, but killing isn't murder. And St. Augustine wrote a paper on a just war, that it is okay to kill in a just war situation. And I think that might have, if we had known about it, would have settled some concerns of some of the guys. Unknown to you guys, considering today, many of us had not had sex. And this was, I just talked to one recently who was in on the invasion. He said he was scared about being killed before he could ever have sex, which is kind of sad. So anyway, as we got going, we found in the towns and villages great jubilation, people screaming and laughing and throwing flowers at us as we go along, bringing wine. The girls would come up and when the convoy was stopped at times, would give us kisses, which wasn't bad. We would try our darnest to get them to get into our tractor, which was an M4, like an M4 Pershing, a Sherman tank, rather, except without the turret. It was made into a troop compartment. But we couldn't convince them to stay and ride with us a little ways. One of the things we saw, I don't know if Madame knows about this, it didn't happen in the big cities. It happened in the villages and towns where people knew one another. Apparently, as we liberated, they sought out the girls who had collaborated with Germans, and the fellows too. The girls, then the mothers, some were mothers, had little babies with them, had their heads all shaved, really down to the bare scalp. And then they were lined up and paraded down the street with the townspeople taking switches from trees and that. No blood occurring or pounding at them, but people would run up and hit them. And they were whacked away. And some with the little babies. The fellas, I don't know what happened to them. I suspect they were taken care of in some way. Our living conditions were kind of hasty. We lived in foxholes. In damaged buildings, we would take the front doors and cover it over our foxholes, cover it with dirt. In Germany, we didn't care. We'd just tear the front doors off. In fact, there's one incident I'm not proud of. I was scrounging around from our gun position in Germany, found this home untouched, and I went in, and there were pictures of the males in German uniforms. There were writings of Adolf Hitler, and I saw a Bechstein piano. And in my I was angry about the whole thing, I smashed a nice, brand new, untouched Bechstein, so it was unusual. I figured the people, when they returned, it just didn't seem right that they would come back to a house that was still intact and a nice new Bechstein piano. What else can I say here? We continued into Belgium and Holland and eventually Germany and wound up on the Elbe River in East Germany with the Russians on the east side. We were on the west side. And we had bridges across. We had tanks and infantry across. But because of an agreement, I think it was the Yalta Agreement, The Russians would take over Berlin and so forth. We could have reached it. We were 35 miles from there. And they held back, and we were on the west side, of course. VE Day came, May 8th, 1945, and there was great celebration on the eastern side. The Russians were firing weapons, they were firing flares, got hold of vodka, they had accordion music and so forth. Their war was over. We did not celebrate. We were worn out. We were utterly spent, emotionally, physically. And we knew we were headed for the Pacific because we had to take on Japan. Finally, August 15th, VJ Day came, Victory in Japan. And did we celebrate? No. We were just weary. We know that at home there were celebrations going on. We see pictures in Times Square and girls kissing the guys in uniform and so forth. We had none of that. Just before that occurred, and I'm not proud of this, Hitler had charged the young people, the Hitler Youth, and the others to conduct guerrilla warfare against the American occupiers. And we were by a seawall in a town on the Elbe River. We were in position down on the floodplain, and there was a big rock seawall. And the young guys, Hitler Youth, would come in and harass us, throwing grenades, and the German grenade is sort of like our flashbang that our police now use, not the pineapple grenades that we were used to. And they just kept it up. One night, one young guy just persisted. We'd fire warning shots over their head. Finally, he was just tossing grenades at us, and I took one shot, and I got him. He was a 14-year-old, your age, blonde-haired, blue-eyed young guy, and I felt no regret. That was killing in the truest sense, but I was angry at Hitler that would take young men, brainwash them, and turn them into killers like that. That was about it. At the end, the regrets that I had, I was asked to comment on this. I regret the many of our lads that never made it. Some 18, 19, 20, 21 years old who would never have the love of a woman, have children, just turn into good citizens, but they didn't make it through. I regret not entirely the 14-year-old boy that I took out. I regret the death camps. We liberated a number of POW and death camps. And if you recently have seen Voices of Auschwitz on CNN or Schindler's List, these things happened. I know there's people around that are saying it never occurred. It's all a myth. It wasn't. But what we did, which was, they never told us, don't feed these people. You'll be tempted to because they're just skin and bones. They made it this far. And we would feed them chocolate and our high-calorie combat rations and literally killed a number of them. That I regret, too. If only the medics had told us, don't do that. And another sad thing, I was asked to comment on memories. I feel one of the things we had to do, we had been together 4 years, and now we were to go home. And it would be nice if we could go home as a unit. But some of the guys, let's say, had been there only a month as replacements. The rest of us had been there a long time. And it was, the Army, in its carefulness, wanted to set up a point system. And you got points for the number of months in the Army, number of months they were overseas, number of months in combat. If you had a wife, you had a certain points for all your children, and any medals that you received, and the 100 pointers got to another unit that went home as a unit, but they were all strangers. Those with 90 went to another unit and then came home afterwards. That was sad. And in my gun section, there's only 2 of us left now because, age takes its toll. And I'd like to read something to you. They caught me unawares here. You can hold that. No, this is, you might recognize it, Bill. This is from a Sergeant Eggers, he was in the G Company 328th Regiment of the 26th Infantry Division, the Yankee Division, which was Bill's division. And he says, more than 64 years have passed since those terrible months where we endured the mud, the bitter cold. We were miserable and cold and exhausted most of the time. We were scared to death. But we were young and strong then, possessed of the marvelous resilience of youth. And for all the misery and fear and hating every moment of it, the war was great, if always a terrifying adventure. Not a man of us would want to go through it again, but we are proud of having been severely tested and found adequate. The only regret for those of our friends who never returned. Gives you an idea from an infantryman's point of view. So I would say, in finishing, that I would encourage you scouts to talk with your grandparents and ask them, maybe it's your great-grandparents at this point, and ask them what they did during World War II. Now, the scouts I know, and it was mentioned here, were involved nationwide in collecting aluminum. We made 173,000 aircraft, bombers and everything out of aluminum, and they needed aluminum. The Boy Scouts would go around and collect aluminum pots and that would be melted down. They also collected silk for parachutes. So they had quite a hand in the war effort. But I would leave you with the thought, as was mentioned, freedom is not free. And the freedoms that we have to be cherished, and they have to be protected, and even sometimes have to go to war to protect them. So I hope you don't have to do it. It is a wild adventure being in the military, but it can be tough too, and horrific. So, thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, everybody is. You're going to get a chance. I'd like now each veteran to introduce himself. If he has some little comment to make, fine. Lynn? Introduce yourself, pass it on.
And your unit.
Well, forgive me, folks. I've had some powerful medication for kidney failure. So if my speech is kind of slurry, do forgive me. We were glider infantry, and we belonged to the 325 glider infantry group. And we were hooked up with the 442nd Battalion. There I go.
Okay, I'll take it if you want. I'll take it if you want. Warren Jensen. I was a gunner with a field artillery unit, and that was it.
I just have one very short thing to say. There isn't a hero up here. None of us are heroes. The heroes all lie under the crosses and stars of David because they gave everything. We are merely survivors. Here you go.
Jake Larson. I was one of the lucky ones. Went over there was in the service before we even thought of war. All we thought about was peace. And Roosevelt was a devil for trying to get us into war. I joined the National Guard unit at the age of 15 because it was Depression. And every 3 months, I got a money parcel from heaven, $12 check.
You got more than I got.
Well, I had to work for my room and board to make my way through high school, but I graduated at 17 and had been joined the National Guard at 15. So we were put into federal service in February 1st, 1941. 41, we went down to Camp Claiborne, Louisiana, and in June, I had an operation, appendicitis.
Make it short, Jake.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank everybody that came here to see this, and we are proud to be called Americans. And like you say, we are not heroes, we are survivors.
That's right.
The reason we're getting this medal is because our age puts us there.
I'm Earl Mortensen. I was in the field artillery, and we came in on Normandy about 5 days after, and we joined our battalion was given the mission to support the 1st Infantry Division. And so we got involved in learning how to dig holes in trenches and in Normandy and the apple orchard areas. Then after we finished in Normandy, we went to the Felice Gap and we were firing there. And then we got orders to join the French 2nd Armored Division and the Free French. And so we joined the French and we went into Paris and into an area called Saint Denis, which was in the northwestern part of Paris. And there we set up our artillery in. This was very interesting because we had all these people around and we had to set up our guns, our howitzers in these little parks in Paris there. And so our mission was to fire on a German armored division that was outside of Paris.
Very well said. Excuse me, I'm Dan Franklin. I'm the youngest, I think, up here on the stage. I went into the service in the Navy at age 16 in 1942, and obviously lied about my age, and my father, rest his soul, lied with me, and away I went. I was 17 in Omaha Beach on D-Day. We were in LCM, which is a 50-foot landing craft, and our task was to pick up troops from the LCTs, the landing ship tank, and take them to the beach. As I say, we were the lead boat in the 3rd wave, and it was very difficult. And I really had forgotten until this last June 6th some of the commentary, and they showed bullets hitting the ramp, and our boat was a steel boat. I had completely forgotten that. So that the machine guns on top coming down at us was pretty fierce. I don't go into too much detail. I've given some talks about D-Day, but what I recommend is that anyone that really wants to see what happened that day, get a hold of the movie Saving Private Ryan, and the first 10 minutes is enough for anyone. And frankly, I can't watch it. But as one of the fellows here said, survivor is the word, hero is a bit much. But thank you all for the recognition. It's much appreciated.
About 5 years ago, I was very pleased to receive a medal from the Consul General, a nice gentleman sponsored by the American Legion. So every 5 years, if I receive a medal from you, my next medal, I'll be 100 years old. I asked the gentleman, will this certificate get me a room in a hotel in Paris? And he says, yes, it will, but you'll have to pay. I was on a seagoing tug as executive officer, 23 years old. They had a large tug at each one of the beaches. I was at Omaha, at Utah for a while, and then the ship at Omaha was sunk and we were moved over there. There hasn't been much written about the tugboats and what they did during the invasion, so I wrote a book. It took me a year, and it's selling quite well. I get about $100 a month out of it. It's on Kindle, and I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just, if anybody's interested, why, you might like to read it. After the, it's called A Ship with No Name, and my name is Richard Hersey. And it'll cost you, I think, about $4 or $5. Or if you go on Kindle, it's about $2, and I get $1 out of that. So it's not a way to make a living.
Richard, there's your flyer.
Yes, I have a few of those if anybody's interested. I went on active duty in 1940. I was 20 years old. I had been in an NROTC unit, and there were so many people that didn't want us to go in the war that this NROTC unit at the college I was at folded. And I forgot about it, and then all of a sudden I got orders to go in the Navy, and I went on as an apprentice seaman. And I retired as a commander. After 3.5 years on one ship, when they talked about going across the international date line, I went across many times, and I have had 2 birthdays on this, because I had 2 days of the same birthday. So I got out of the Navy after the invasion. I'd had enough, and about several months later, I got a nice letter from an admiral saying, if you go over to Treasure Island and drill with the reserves, well, you could get a pension. You've been in the Navy long enough. Sounded good to me, so I did that. Along came the Korean War. I was called back. I left my wife with a baby in arms and another one learning how to walk. I was back there for 2 years and made several landings over there. So I've had quite a long career, but luckily I got through it. Thank you.
My name is Lynne Freeman. Everything has been so serious along the way, I thought I would try to enter a little humor into this. When we landed, we scattered out. I was a private first-class gunner on a machine gun, and everyone in my platoon was very thirsty. So we spread out over the countryside as best we could to find some cider. And as we would approach the farmhouses, we would use our best French saying, "Avez-vous des cidres?" And I learned about 27 years later that cider was not called cidre. But it's no wonder we didn't have much success getting any. So anyway, we finally learned that Calvados was better than cidre anyway. And so our search expanded. And I must say, the people in France were very wonderful to us.
I'm Bob Hitchcock. I wasn't on the beach that day. I was in a B-17. I'm a radio operator. We were at 14,000 feet. My first targets were in France. We were pushing the Germans back. We had, somebody's waving at me, I don't know. So anyway, on my 7th mission, I was picked to go to a little English school. I was in England. Go to a little English school to study radar. Radar was brand new then. And it took about a week to 10 days. I was sent back to combat. I ended up at a B-24 base. And I thought the truck driver had made a mistake. And I pointed out to him, I said, those are B-24s parked out there. He said, so what? I said, well, I'm not trained on that airplane. I'm a B-17 guy. He said, well, you better learn. So I flew 8 missions with those guys. Back to B-17s again. Got shot down on my 23rd mission. We were in friendly territory, thank the good Lord. And we all got home safe. The plane was a total loss, but I completed 32 missions and never got hit. They missed me every time. So I'm very grateful for every day I've had here in America. I got to come home with my wife, and one of my boys is here tonight. And I just have been grateful for every day. And my heart goes out to all my buddies who didn't make it.
My name is Chuck Sapper. My experience on D-Day was as a B-17 pilot, the 4-engine bomber. Well, we had a briefing at 2:30 in the morning, on the morning of June the 6th. Our colonel told us that we'd see 2 different things about our B-17s when we got to them that morning. Number 1, all the nacelles on the plane had been painted with 3 white stripes. This was because we were afraid of some of these guys here who maybe was their first chance to shoot at an airplane, and we didn't want them shooting at us. So we were very well identified. The other was that we had only half amount of gasoline that we usually carried, and that weight was made up by additional bombs slung under the wings, hammock type. We hit the beaches. My target was the Normandy. It was the Omaha Beach, and the idea was to put as many bomb craters in the beaches as we could, so that our troops didn't have to cross a half mile or more of empty sand, as they'd have a place to go into on the way to the hills. At any rate, instead of breakfast, we just had a little coffee or tea and what the English called torts, if we wanted. The mission went very smoothly. We turned around, came back, and this time we did have breakfast, got into planes again, and they were trussed up as before. This time we bombed at places like Falaise and Caen, which were 34 miles behind the lines, or was going to be the lines, in order to keep the Germans from bringing troop trains up to reinforce the Germans that were already there. This second time, as we were coming back, it was light enough. It was about 6:30, and the first troops were beginning to land on the beach. But what impressed me even more than that were the ships, because the wake, you couldn't see individual ships at that time, but the wake of each ship sparkled against that dark ocean because the sun was just beginning to give enough light so that the foam from the wake of the ships would sparkle. I never saw so many ships in my life. I didn't think there were that many ships. But at any rate, I'll never forget Normandy. We did feel that we had seen something of historical note. And although we had many missions after that, deep into Germany and even Poland, we never forgot our experience on Normandy.
I will be brief. My name is Heber Smith. I flew 35 combat missions over Europe as a 19-year-old bombardier on a B-17 heavy bomber. On our 18th mission, halfway through, lost 2 engines over Munich and wound up ditching in the North Sea. Had a lot of fun.
My name is Benny Jordan. I don't know if I'm supposed to be here or not. The country of my birth is Scotland. And I am here tonight because my son lives about half a block from here. And so it's... Oh, yeah, thank you. So I'd like to thank the fellow next to me for helping me out. Well, anyway, I was called up in January 1942 to a Scottish regiment. And after 6 months, I saw a way out when they were looking for volunteers for the parachute regiment. And I joined that in August 1943. And then D-Day came along, and I was there amongst 3,000 British paratroops. And we left England at 11 o'clock at night on June the 5th. And it was as bright as it is in this room here at 11 o'clock at night. We landed at over in Normandy at 1 a.m., 6 hours before the men hit the beaches. So we were there on the far left side, the east side of the British Army. And then about 5 or 6 weeks later, we all had to advance. And our division, the British 6th Airborne Division, we went eastward towards the coast, and we got to the west side of Paris and stopped there. And we were shipped back to England, given some specialised training in boating. I can't see how boating would be very interesting to airborne troops. Anyway, we were back there, and the armies were still attacking east. And we went back over to Holland, to Belgium, and landed at Ostend. And we were told our unit was near Wismar in Germany. So as keen as I was, I volunteered to go. And I was in this office where there was about half a dozen British soldiers. They were think they were bookkeepers or something. But when they heard that I wanted to go back to my unit, 300 miles away in Germany, they were saying that this guy must have been injured right enough. But anyway, I hitchhiked my way, and as we were following various troops, about 5 of us all met on the road, and we landed at Wismar about 4 days later. And I joined my unit again. And my platoon officer was very happy to see me. And in the meantime, back in Glasgow, 2 military policemen came to our door looking for me. And my mother said, gee, Benny's away back about 10 days ago. And they didn't believe her. And so my mother had to knock the door next to her. And the lady there got up about 3 o'clock in the morning and vouched that I was away back to my unit. So that was a bit of a closing area for me, although we were headed for the Battle of the Bulge. And we got to our area there on the 20th of December. And we stayed in that area till about the 28th or 29th of January. And other troops took over from our unit, and we went back to England, and were refitted with all new clothes. And at the same time, yes. At the same time, we were advancing, and I don't know if I was in Belgium or Germany. Anyway, we headed back in February. We headed back to England. They put us on a plane.
Limited on time. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Hilbert Syward. I'm called Lucky. Lucky, lucky, lucky. Every time I turned around, it seemed like that in the service. I missed the draft by 1 day. I volunteered for the Navy. I went to finish my college, called up to active duty, and they sent me to Columbia University and became one of the 90-day wonders. Got through there, pretty tough work in brains. Anyway, I made it, commissioned an officer in the Navy. Finished that, and we then were sent to Norfolk, Virginia, Little Creek, for training in the amphibious force. And when we got there, we knew right away what we were going to be doing, or where. Didn't know when, where, or what, but it was, we were training it for that. Then we were there about 5-6 months. We moved to Fort Pierce, Florida, advanced training, and started training with the Army, loading and unloading troops onto and off of ships, things like that. And then we were assigned to LST, that's Landing Ship Tank 503. And in some ways it was, again, kind of lucky, because we had half the crew on a 503 was survivors of the Battle of Anzio. So we had experienced people with us. Half of us were about new people. We went from there, port to port to port, outfitting the ship, New Orleans, and in New Orleans we loaded on the deck of the LST and LCT. Somebody mentioned that here before, and which of course were used in Normandy. On top of inside the LCT, they loaded a yard patrol boat inside of that, I'm told. And then we were off for Europe. We left New Orleans. We had no submarines around that area. Went up to Halifax and got into the convoy in Halifax. It was about an 80-ship convoy. From there, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much. My turn. I want to tell you about my 77 years in scouting.
For you fastidious people, I wanted to let you know from June to May, June of 44 to May of 45, I had 2 hot showers. And they just weren't available. The other thing was I got thinking too, after the war, we didn't talk about our experiences. I think it was just too painful. As we've gotten older, we talk more about it, like tonight. And what's nice is to be recognized and thanked, like what's happening here tonight, for our service. That means a lot to us even after 70 years. So appreciate that. I've worked up a bunch of things that are available mostly for the Scouts, but I made up 75 copies, and I don't know how many are here. But there's links to some interesting things. One that I just came through was www.facebook.com/World War II Museum with lots of links. So what would we say, that they could come up at refreshments? Yeah, do that. I'll give out copies mostly for the Boy Scouts. Yes.
Hello, people. I want to make this short and sweet. I'm 94, going on 95. Bill and I were walking yesterday in Lafayette, taking a walk, and I understand we were going to be here tonight. This is a wonderful medal. I have a friend that's buried in Cherbourg, and I think that if I can ever make it there, I'm going to take this. It's a beautiful thing, and I'm going to put it on his cross. And that's where I'm at. I was shot down over Germany in 44 also. So, forgive me for my transgressions.
Thank you.
I'd finally like to thank you all for coming, and I'd finally like to thank these heroic survivors for their service to our country.